What's the
This
weather like out
conference
there?
will now be recorded.
Is it pretty
So
nice?
I mean, yeah, it's Florida, so it's
Oh,
nice.
you did say Florida.
Um,
Never mind. Never mind. I don't want to hear about your good weather. Forget it.
yeah, so I mean, I just came back from Miami and that was really nice weather. So I'm in Gainesville, which is can get cold. But I mean, in Miami earlier this week it was shorts weather. So
Nice. We had
yeah.
one good day that was good weather, but after that, it's Kansas, so it can change at the drop of a hat. So, um, well, let me go ahead and get to my intro. Guys, what's going on? My name is Pat Brown. I'm a financial advisor here in Lawrence, Kansas, with Edmonds Duncan. I played football for the University of Kansas many, many, many years ago. I feel old. My knees feel old. I'm old. And so, what I want to do is create a resource for current student athletes to hopefully learn from some of those that have gone before them. And as time has gone by, we have new things that have come down the pipeline, which being the name, image, and likeness. And so I want to give guys the ability to talk to folks that are in that space. And today, I'm very, very fortunate and very happy to be talking to Katie Davis, who is a CPA and has a voice in that space. And so I just want to read a little bit of the bio for Katie Davis because I think it's important. Katie Davis is a certified public accountant, a CPA, and a partner in collegiate athletics practice leader at James Moore and Company. So that title is interesting. So I want to make sure I get that correct. It's an accounting firm that works with collegiate athletes departments, athletic associations, booster clubs, and higher education related organizations nationwide. She helps educate the sports business industry on relevant issues that impact us now and in the future. This includes development of a tax specific video courses, live workshops, other resources that help student athletes maneuver through the NIL space safely. So again, all the opportunities that you guys are getting, she's at the forefront. She understands how this works. So hopefully you guys listen and tune in. She also co-hosts the firm's News and Brews Sports Biz podcast series that makes regular appearances on other industry broadcast programs and publications. Welcome, Katie Davis.
Hey Pat, thanks for having me. I'm
Hey.
excited to be with you today.
Absolutely. And as we were kind of talking a little bit offline, just talking about the fact that this name, image, likeness is such a moving target is really hard to grasp a hold. And so it's great that this is one of your focus and, everything that's kind of going on across the landscape of this. It's interesting and it's scary at the same time. So I just want to, again, expose some of these student athletes to what your knowledge base is and how, they should be going to a professional like yourself in order to get good guidance.
Mhm.
So I guess kind of diving right into it, what are some good habits to prepare for taxes for these young student athletes?
Well, I think, first of all, it's really exciting. It is nerve-wracking, probably, just anytime anyone gets out into the workforce. And I think with this just being so new, there are so many things to think about. And of course, I am a huge supporter of athletes being able to earn income, and taxes is not a reason why they shouldn't. But I think they do need to be aware. And so many times people don't know what they don't know. And when it comes to taxes, maybe caught by surprise, primarily because the way NIL is, you're not an employee of anywhere. So you might have been used to, if your parents collect a paycheck and they're an employee for another company, they're getting a piece of that paycheck that they're getting goes to taxes, and your employer does that for you. When you are earning income on name, image, and likeness, you're not getting a paycheck, you're getting just money. And
Yeah,
then Uncle Sam is going to say, "Where's my cut?"
right.
And no one else is doing that for you. So it's a little bit more responsibility to understand that you've got to follow certain things as being what's considered an independent contractor or self-employed, essentially. And especially when you're getting money or other non-cash type benefits from multiple sources, and just knowing what that means. There's a lot of complicated things to keep track of. So, as far as what you should do is just understand that and
Mhm.
keep really good records. So there's a
Mm.
lot of apps out there. If you Google apps for tracking income and expense or budgeting, I mean, there are a lot of apps out there, or you can use Excel. We tell a lot of people just keep a list of these are the deals I got, and this is the amount of money I made. This is when I received the money. This
Mhm.
is the state that I earned the money in, because there are state income taxes, and every state has different rules. And
Yeah.
with college athletes, that can be, um, you know, confusing if you come from one state and your parents still live in one state and your hometown is in that state, but then you go to school in another state, or you make an appearance while you're at a championship that might be in another state. And so,
Wow.
knowing all of these things and just keeping track of it, and keeping track of any expenses that you pay that's related to NIL activities. So,
Hmm.
if you have to drive to make an appearance, you can keep track of the miles that you drive and take
Okay.
deductions for that. So that can reduce the amount of taxes you're paying. If you have to buy t-shirts or bottled water for a camp that you're hosting, those
Hmm.
types of expenses you'll want to keep track of as well. So I would just say stay really organized and keep all your paperwork, whether it's contracts that you sign, copies of receipts for amounts you pay, and we can get more into the details of, a lot of times you may not end up having to pay taxes, but
Mhm.
in some cases, depending on how big your deals are, you will be subject to taxes, or at least have to file the forms to prove that you don't actually have to pay it, but you still
So,
have to disclose the information. So it's a lot to keep up with.
so you made a good, well, a couple things I want to take note of. Something as simple as a spreadsheet. You're saying just to notate, obviously the state that you're in, how much you made, how much you pay for whether it's bottled water, whether it's t-shirts. So something as simple as that can really benefit these student athletes. I think that's something to kind of key in on. And also, you made mention of a non-cash deal.
Mhm.
And so, if you kind of can explain to some of these guys what a non-cash deal is or what a non-cash deal looks like.
So your non-cash deals could be anywhere from a discount on apparel, up to free meals at the local restaurant, or it could be car.
Yep.
There's really, it could be an all expense paid trip to make an appearance where your flight's covered and your hotel is covered. There are a lot of different types of non-cash deals that you could have.
Hmm.
Um, but the bottom line is technically that's all still income earnings to you, even though you don't have the cash in the bank to show for it. And that's where, um, in some cases it could be small and not trigger taxes, but in other cases, it's really hard to pay taxes with 25% of a car, or that barbecue meal that you ate once a week for a year. And so you've got to think about having some cash paying gigs too, so that you have enough cash to cover your taxes.
That's key. And again, I hope you guys are listening because it's very important what she's saying. And so, the headlines get bombarded with some of these athletes that are getting these cars, essentially from a car dealership, and there's still going to be potentially a tax ramification later on down the road. And you had touched on something before we even started recording, as far as if it's short term. So for a football
Mm-hmm.
season or for a basketball season, which I didn't even think about. Some of these deals are constructed to where it's just for a specific season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are most of the deals I've seen have been short term. So it's, you get access to a vehicle for football or basketball season. And the way that's treated is, the market value. If you were to rent that car on a monthly basis, what
Hmm.
that price is going to be what your income is from a tax reporting standpoint. So I walked through an example with somebody else on the LSU quarterback was one of the first car deals, and he his F-150, and you think, oh, F-150, those are going to be expensive, but it was just for football season. And when
Mm,
we looked at what that monthly market value is for that, let's say it's a 5 to 6 month time period,
mm-hmm.
um, it still wasn't big enough. If that was his only deal, wasn't big enough to require income tax. So from the U.S. standpoint, for federal income tax, you have to make roughly $12,500 to have to pay
Mm,
income taxes.
okay.
But you're also self-employed. And what that means is there's a separate self-employment tax on earnings that you make. And what that does, it goes to Medicare and Social Security. When
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a company doing that for you, you're essentially your own boss. So you're
Yeah.
having to put that in. So that's 15.3%. So I think in the scenario that we looked at, it was maybe a few $100s that you would have to pay in. You would have to file because you have to put in the Social Security. There are benefits to that, and that you're starting to build that foundation for retirement.
Sure.
So it's not a bad thing necessarily, but you do have to have a few $100s could be an impact to some student athletes who don't have a whole lot of money to spend on things like that. And so just
Absolutely.
really thinking through, even in a case like that where it's not this huge splashy, I'm given an actual car for the rest of my life, or it's not a rotation of vehicles for a 3-year period, so you may not have to pay tax, but in a significant way, but you still would have to do the filings, pay a few $100s for the self-employment, depending on what state you're in. Some states are more aggressive than others in
Yeah.
where you have to pay, and that's confusing too, because the state that you're from is going to want, if that's a state that has income tax, they're going to want their share, even if you're going to school or driving the car somewhere else.
Yeah.
But if that other state that you're in going to school also has tax, they're going to want their piece too. And so, and like I said, all the rules are different. And so it's really understanding, um, you know, does it make sense to be going into this deal? And that's something that, car, probably, yeah, it makes sense. If you've got a car you can drive for a few months, and especially if you are relying on public transportation, or your car is not really in the best shape, and you can set it aside and let it last you longer if you have this really nice vehicle for a few
Sure.
months. I mean, that's, I would think, probably worth it, but you need to be prepared to um, you know, have the cash set aside. Ask the dealer if you can also make an extra appearance to get a little bit of money
Hmm.
as part of the deal. I think that would be something
That's a
worthwhile, just
great
to talk
idea.
about the tax side of it and say, hey,
Yeah.
can I get a little cash added to this to pay the taxes? I mean, that kind of strategy, I think, is a really good negotiation tool. And hopefully they understand why that's so important, because, you're 18 to 22, 23 years old.
Yep.
In some cases, we're seeing high school athletes now getting this that are much younger than that. And I think, you know, you don't just have a bunch of money necessarily laying around to be able to be prepared for that.
So, um, to listen to you, I started thinking, if you have high school kids that are getting into these deals, these situations, they're not even of the age to even sign these contracts. So I'm curious how that's going to work out or pan out. I guess in future. Um,
Yeah.
so, kind of moving forward, are there any easy tax strategies athletes should be thinking about? The strategy you just mentioned sounds like a great strategy. Are there any other strategies that you can kind of think of off the top of your head?
Yeah, the first strategy I say is, set aside the money for taxes, because if whether you're getting outright cash, or you're getting, something non-cash, don't go blow it all. So I say to be safe, to cover the federal income tax, your potential state income tax, and then that self-employment tax, 25% is a really good safety net to have. So for every
Mm-hmm.
dollar you make, put a quarter in your piggy bank and don't look at it, and pretend it doesn't even exist until tax time. And once you start filling out your forms, then you'll know more closely what your taxes are going to have to be. And then chances are with that 25%, you'll have a little bit left over, and then it's a bonus. So, that's a really smart strategy, just so you don't get caught unprepared. And that's, I would say rule number one, strategy number one is to focus on that. And then the next strategies are probably more focused on how to reduce the amount of taxes you're paying, or how to get your taxes covered for you. So I talked about, ask for some cash to go along with the car, or the free products, so that you can cover the taxes on that. Some other strategies are some expenses. So I talked about the bottled water.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you have that, that's an expense that you can deduct from your income, and then what's left is what you're taxed on. So um, there's that. There's, if you do a lot of social media, and part of
Mm-hmm.
your contracts are, Instagram, TikTok, and you need a really good camera, you need a ring light, you need all these other things.
Right.
Those, keep your receipts for that and keep track of that, because you can deduct that. Um, and really, I think there's one area that does get you tripped up, though, and I see this commonly, is you can't deduct personal items. So I need to get a fresh haircut,
Yeah.
some new makeup, these new shoes for this appearance. That's great, and certainly treat yourself, but you can't deduct that, because that's your personal
That's a great
appearance.
point.
It's your items. So again, knowing what is allowed to be taken against your income to reduce your taxes, which a lot of, obvious expenses are out there, but that, unfortunately, as much as we would love to be able to deduct that and take that as a tax write-off, you can't. So just being careful about that too.
Yeah, I can't deduct my haircut, is what you're saying. I'm done. I'm done. So.
Yeah, no.
No, that makes perfect sense from a form standpoint, because you mentioned a number of times, obviously you would fill out certain forms and so forth.
Mhm.
Um, is there a particular site that these student athletes can go to pull these forms off, or is it just a matter of obviously getting with someone like yourself to take care of this all for them?
Yeah, so there are a couple really good resources. So the IRS, irs.gov, that's the United States Taxing Authority. There's a ton, way more information than you're ever going to want to know there. So don't let it suck you in. But
Right.
just know there are resources there, and each state has their own forms and instructions, depending on what state you're in. But in general, the first form that you'll fill out, that will be given to you by whoever's sponsoring your deal, and that'll be a good indication that they're going to report your income for tax purposes,
Mm-hmm.
is if they make you fill out what's called a W-9. And
Okay.
so generally, when you sign your deal, or right before the end of the year, they're going to want to gather your personal information, your name, your address, social security number, date of birth, those kinds of things, because that's the information that will go on an official form that goes to the IRS. That form's called a 1099. And
Okay.
so after the end of the year, so after the end of December, and the company kind of summarizes and says, this is the amount I've paid to this person, usually late January, you will receive that 1099 in the mail. And so another reason for keeping good records is you want to make sure that matches up with what you were expecting to see, and
Right.
there's not a difference. So that 1099, when it comes to you, it also goes to the government. So they know, and they'll be
Yep.
looking for you to file. And that's really, I think that's where you'll really start to feel the pressure then to understand and gather everything together. So if you're more prepared up front, that can help you be prepared to pay those taxes. In some cases, you may not even have to fill out a W-9. If it's a
Mm.
local restaurant, or you're getting discounts, I mean, technically, the federal or state governments could crack down and really look for some of this, but I think it's lower risk, at least now, until
Mm-hmm.
maybe states start responding to this new population of people that are earning money and creating specific rules around it from a tax standpoint. I would say
Yeah.
it's pretty low risk if you're not asked to fill out a W-9. If it's free meals, free pizza, or
Mhm.
you know, discount $10 off every time you buy a pair of shoes from this website, I think those kinds of things will just fly under the radar, and that's fine. And good for you.
So go.
But I think it's when it gets to be larger deals and they get that form to you. So once you get that, then you're going to want to actually figure out how to pay your taxes. So your tax return is called a 1040. That's a personal tax return. So unless you've gone out and set up your own LLC or you're in business with a bunch of other people, that's the exception, not the rule. It's pretty rare, and most people doing that have agents and people helping them out. So
Sure.
so I'm thinking about most of you who, you're just a person getting some extra money here and there, and that's what a 1040. You'll put all of your information on a 1040, and that's what has to go to the government. And
Mm-hmm.
April 15th is the deadline, but there
Mm-hmm.
is an allowed extension that doesn't penalize you, it doesn't get you in trouble, that you can file. So then it puts it off to October 15th. So you have a while to gather everything you need and get to the right people to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we recommend, starting with your parents and trusted adults that kind of have been there, done that, and can help
Yeah.
you get organized. They might be able to tell you, some tips and tricks that they've learned over the years. And they're also, if you still don't feel comfortable, they're the United Way. So there's United Way all over the country. It's a
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit that supports local communities, and they have a VITA program. So it's a voluntary income tax assistance
Oh,
program. So
okay.
people that are accounting students or accountants or other tax professionals volunteer their time for the United Way to prepare income tax returns for low income individuals. So many times, many of you will be in that definition of a low income individual,
Sure.
and you can get some help from somebody that knows what they're doing there. So that's another place to go. You can also go to your College of Business, or someone in the accounting program or something like that at your university, and there might be people there that can help. I've heard of several universities that have this peer-to-peer assistance type programs within their universities, just so you can go to other students that might be able to help you out or point you in the right direction. So there's a lot of
A lot of
people and
resources.
resources out there that are free, and that's where I would say you start with the
Yeah.
free resources. If you still don't feel like you're getting what you need, or you feel like your situation's a little more complicated, if you're traveling around to a lot of states, if you have a lot of non-cash deals, if things like that, you may want to go to a tax professional or a certified public accountant, and you can ask around and say, who's reputable and recommended in your either in your hometown where you're from, or where you're going to school, and but know that that costs money. So
Yeah.
again, you're already having to have cash to pay your taxes. You may not also want to pay somebody else to do your taxes for you. So, but it could be worthwhile if they're helping you get some more
Absolutely.
deductions and strategize and make sure it's done right, so that you don't have to worry or potentially make the wrong kind of headline. You want your name in the headlines to be positive and good, and not end up in the paper because you didn't know how to pay your taxes right.
Right.
Which unfortunately, that's a fear of mine, is that the media is not always nice to athletic programs and student athletes. And so we my hope is that people don't start looking for some of that if it's a slow news day. So um,
Yeah.
so,
You bring up
just being,
a great point. This idea as far as financial literacy for student athletes. Um, I remember years and years ago, I had watched ESPN 30 for 30 going broke. And in that they just talk to different pro athletes who obviously have made it to the next level. And the thing that always bites them typically are the taxes. And just as you mentioned, from state to state, taxes are a little bit different. If you're not watching
Mhm.
and keeping track, it can certainly bite you later on. And
Well,
obviously,
and
with name, image, likeness, it kind of shortens that. And now these guys are more exposed to it than before.
well, and the pros have it easy. The pros have it easier than you guys do because they have a company owns the team that's writing their paycheck and sending their taxes in for them. Now the pros will have sponsorship deals on the side and get the
Sure.
1099s like what I'm talking about, but essentially name, image, and likeness is only that.
Mm,
So 100% of your taxes, you're responsible for making sure it's put in. You don't have anyone else helping you do that. So
yeah.
the pros have it easier. So, thinking about that and just being careful that you're not, getting caught, watch some of those episodes of the going broke and some of the lessons learned by other people so that you can try to not get into those same situations.
Yeah, I hear you. So as we kind of narrow down, I guess I had one more question. What should parents know about this, and how should they either help guide? I know you mentioned, go to your parents and hopefully they can kind of help guide you a little bit, but is there something that parents should kind of realize as well?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things out there. So if if you're thinking you're going to earn a lot, and as you're going through the recruiting process, even that's happening early on. Parents should be asking, what are some advantages of if I'm going to choose a school that's local to where I already live, or it
Mhm.
might be out of state. What are some of the impacts to that and advantages from a tax standpoint, a legal standpoint, and all of that, because states have their own rules. Even right now, each state has their own NIL rules.
Yeah,
So asking some of those questions and really understanding that, but then also knowing. So if you come from a family that has low income and relies on federal assistance for things like Pell Grants, if you get Pell Grants in addition to athletic
oh,
scholarship, that's based on you not earning that much money, and it's based on your family's earned income. And so if all of a sudden you start earning a lot, that could jeopardize your Pell Grant potentially. And if you have siblings that are also getting Pell Grants and also in school, um, that can maybe harm their Pell Grants too. But on the flip side, you might earn money to where you're no longer part of your parents' taxes, you're no longer a dependent. So then you
sure,
come off of that, and then maybe you wouldn't impact the rest of your family. But then if you're coming off your parents' tax returns, they're now not getting some of the benefits that they get when they have dependent children who, if you're in school, you can be 20 up to 24 years old and still be claimed as a dependent on your parents' tax return. So they get some benefits from that. So that's something else they need to understand is,
Ooh,
that's always something parents have to think about, is when their children spread their wings and fly and start earning their own money. Eventually, they're going to come off the tax return,
yeah.
but they may know it may be before you graduate from college. If you start earning enough money, you'll have to file for yourself.
Ooh, Katie dropping some knowledge. That's important. I mean, all joking
Mhm.
aside, I obviously I hadn't even thought about that, how that would affect if you're, in a Pell Grant and how that affects the overall situation. So, yeah, wow.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's good stuff. So, I guess kind of closing, I mean, how do guys get in contact with you, or how do you help if you can kind of give your information if someone wants to reach out to you?
Yeah, so really happy to help. We have a lot of free resources on our website. So jmco.com. It's for James Moore and Company. At the top of our webpage, there's an industries box, and you go to college athletics, and and then under that, there's a specific NIL page. And on that, we've got a map of the United States where you can click on it and you can see the NIL rules for each state. You can see what the tax rules are for each state. And then there are a ton of articles and interviews. As I said, we have, you mentioned in my intro, we have a podcast, News and Brews Sports Biz, where we frequently talk about NIL. So there's clips from that that's all kind of gathered in that one spot. I think that's a really good spot, free resource for athletes. Tell your friends, tell your your academic advisors and your compliance folks and stuff in your athletic department about it, because that could be a really good resource for them to help others at your school too. You can also reach out to me. I'm on Twitter at Katie Davis CPA. So I post a lot of stuff there, and my DMs are open, so you can reach out to me there. My contact information is also on our website. So, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to help. And I know there's a lot of great resources out there outside of my organization. Businessofcollegesports.com has a lot of really good information on NIL. So, I would recommend looking for really good, reputable resources out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Katie, I appreciate all your time. This has been an eye opener for me. And certainly I hope those that are listening just really listen to what you have to say and just really reach out to her if you have questions, because this has been great. So
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to be here, and yes, please reach out. And thanks, Pat. It's been really great chatting with you.
absolutely. Well, I will talk to you later, and thanks again.
All right, thanks.
Yep. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.